The Chicago Bulls fall to the Detroit Pistons 124-118. We're going to be talking about the key takeaways from tonight's loss. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we're talking about the key takeaways from tonight's loss against the Detroit Pistons. And so I always like to start with the theme of the game. These are just points that really describe what we saw in tonight's game. And so I have three. And so the first one being disappointing. That's exactly how I felt after watching this game. This was a disappointing effort for the Chicago Bulls because I really feel like that they missed an opportunity because this Detroit Pistons team was shorthanded. They did not have Cade Cunningham. They didn't have Isaiah Stewart. They didn't have Jalen Duren. They did not have Tobias Harris. They did not have Azur Thompson. They didn't have Jaden Ivey, and they were still able to get the win against the Chicago Bulls. And so I get it. They didn't have Josh Giddey and they didn't have Kobe White, but this Chicago Bulls team had enough to beat the Detroit Pistons, and they didn't get it done today. And not only did they not get it done, the Detroit Pistons really took it to the Chicago Bulls. They never lost the lead in this game. In fact, when you look at the start for the Detroit Pistons and just really what they were able to do to the Bulls in the first half, they shot lights out. I mean, 60.5% from the field, 52.9% from downtown. They had a season high of 68 points in the first half. And they had several players that really had a good day against the Chicago Bulls. And so I thought that Danish Jenkins really just kind of lived in the paint against the Chicago Bulls. He continued to get to the teeth of the defense there. And then next, when you look at Paul Reed, he had a very good game. And then Duncan Robinson, man, he was shooting lights out from deep. And so they just really had no answer for that. And going back to Danish Jenkins, 16 points in the first half. And so just the Bulls, just defensively, they were giving up backdoors and everything else in this game. And so just very disappointing effort. So next, I wanted to go into the next point, and I just think that flat. That's exactly what I'm thinking about with the Bulls. They came out flat in this game, and I just really felt like that throughout this game, they gave up a ton of backdoor plays. I think that they also just left like open three-point shooters open and stuff like that. And then really, I just think that this team wasn't focused because in the first half, they had like at 1.8 turnovers, which led to 13 points. And then also, too, they weren't executing and hitting free throws. They were 4 of 10 from the free throw line. I believe that was in the second quarter at one point. So you don't want to leave, free points at the line there, especially when you're down in a game like this. And so the focus was not there with the turnovers and the free throws and things like that, with the missed assignments and stuff like that. And so, I think that that's another thing, just flat. And then lastly, I will give the Bulls credit, and it was resilience, because they did get back into this game. They were within 1 point in the fourth quarter with plenty of time to go, and they just could not get over that hump and really put pressure on the Detroit Pistons leading this game. And so the Bulls never led in this game. But in the third quarter, they were able to speed up the Detroit Pistons. I also think that really in the fourth quarter, they made a huge push there. And again, they got it to within 1. They just could not get over that hump today. And so resilience, flat for the Bulls, and then also to just disappointing because I feel like that they just missed an opportunity in this game. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into just really the players that stood out, and then we'll talk about the rest of the player box score here. And so don't have an MVP, but just players that stood out today. And so starting with Kevin Huerter. And so with Kevin Huerter, I think that what I'm impressed with him is that he's continuing to show that he can get it done and he doesn't necessarily have to be at the 3-point line. And so it was a tough night for him tonight. He was 0 of 4 from downtown, but he still had 20 points. He was a -5 in the plus minus box score. Got called for a bit of fouls today, so he had 5 personal fouls. He did have 2 turnovers. He had 2 steals, and he had 2 assists as well with 2 rebounds, 10 of 17 from the field in 27 minutes. And so I think that Kevin Huerter had some good finds as far as his assists. And so I like the fact that, he's always looking to not just score the basketball and make plays for others out there. I like the defensive activity and just him being scrappy and giving him a lot of credit because he stepped into the starting lineup, and you just really don't miss a beat with him, getting into the starting lineup. And so giving him a ton of credit there. He helped lead this as far as points. And then next, Modest Buzelis. And so Modest Buzelis led us in the points tonight. And so I got to give him credit there. And then also, too, with the way that he hit the boards. But I was disappointed with the turnovers because some of these turnovers, when he was trying to put the ball on the deck, they weren't good. And so 21 points. He did have 2 personal fouls. He had 4 turnovers. He had 2 blocks in this one. He had 2 assists, and he had 14 rebounds. He was 5 of 5 from the free throw line. He was 2 of 5 from deep and 7 of 14 from the field. And so I like the fact that you are seeing that he was 7 of 14 from the field in this one. And also, too, he made his free throws. And again, just getting to the boards. And one of the things that I kind of jotted down here about Modest was that, it really looked bad to start off because he only had 2 shots in like the first 8 minutes, but then he hit a 3 and then he was able to get like a rebound and a layup. And then I think he kind of got into the flow and stuff like that. I do think that maybe a little bit of the physicality kind of got to Modest a little bit along with the team, because I do think that the Pistons really brought the physicality to the Bulls today. And so that was Modest Buzelis and Kevin Huerter. I think that both of those players that kind of stood out for us. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into really the rest of the box score today. And so, just starting with Nikola Vucevic. And so Vooch really struggled in this game. And so 6 points, -10 in the plus minus box score, only 1 personal foul. He had 3 turnovers, 3 assists, 6 rebounds. He was 0 of 4 from deep and 3 of 10 from the field. And so, with the Pistons missing their main center there, and to have Vooch struggle like this, like I was surprised. And then it just never felt like that Vooch was really in the flow. I never felt like that he was trying to get to his spots enough and just be as aggressive as he needed to be. And so, I think that the Pistons just kind of took him out of the game. And then also, too, he just never really got into the game. And so I think a disappointing, kind of performance here from Vooch. And so hopefully he's able to bounce back, after another tough game there. And then next, going into Isaac Okoro here. And so with Isaac Okoro, look, I liked what I saw from him in this game. I think that, him just being really active and as far as his movement and stuff like that, like he had a nice play where he's cutting and he got a dunk that way. He shot the ball with confidence. And I'm always liking that with Isaac Okoro because it's been very much up and down on the offensive side of the ball. And I believe that as the season goes along, he's going to get more comfortable in this offense. And I think he's going to start to find his spot. I do think that things are going to open up some more for him when Kobe and then also, too, Josh getting it back on the floor. Like it's going to put a lot more pressure on the rim. And he's not going to necessarily just have to settle for that 3 ball. He will need to make it. But I think that he's going to have some more opportunities to really be a slasher that way because it's going to open up the space. But 15 points tonight, -5 in the plus minus box score, 3 blocks. And so I love that with Isaac Okoro. I think he certainly competed hard there. 2 assists, 4 rebounds, 3 of 4 from the free throw line, 5 of 7 from the field, and 2 of 2 from deep. And so some good stuff there from Isaac Okoro. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into Tre Jones here. And so with Tre Jones, look, 11 points tonight in this one. And then also, too, he was a plus or a -12, in the plus minus box score. And I think that with Tre Jones, like the biggest thing that I can remember out of this game for him is just that it seemed like that when the Pistons were lining up their defense, they kind of walled off like stuff against him and then also to Ayo Dosunmu. Like I think that they did a good job as far as kind of making it difficult for him to kind of get downhill tonight. And so 3 of 6 from the field, 5 of 8 from the free throw line. And so generally he knocks down a lot more free throws. And so he did get to the line 8 times, which actually led for the Bulls. and he had the 5 assists, so he led the Bulls there, and he had 3 steals. And so I like the activity that we saw here from Tre Jones. And so I thought that, you saw the effort there. He's pretty steady for the most part, but I do think that the Pistons there defensively, they made it a little tougher here for Tre Jones, and like some of his finishes and stuff like that. He always is very good as far as finishing in traffic and stuff like that, but the Pistons made it tough, like I think on a lot of players tonight. And so, that was the story there with Tre Jones. Next, kind of jumping into just the bench here. And so starting with Jalen Smith. And so with Jalen Smith, I think that the biggest thing with him is that, he started off well, and then it just kind of it dropped off. And so 9 points, a -7 in the plus minus box score, 4 rebounds, 3 of 5, and then 3 of 8 from the field in only 14 minutes. And so he didn't get to double figures. He also, too, didn't get to a double-double as well. And so, again, he started off well, and then just Jalen Smith just was not able to just continue to keep it going. And the next, Patrick Williams. And so Patrick Williams, his 7 points, -9 in the plus minus box score, the 5 rebounds as well, 3 of 8 from the field in 24 minutes. And so I did like some of the physicality that I saw from Patrick Williams, especially his rebound and putback. I love that. And then Patrick Williams, again, continues, to just go out there and kind of play his game off the bench. Like the fact that he gave us the 5 rebounds as well and the 1 block shot too. And so Patrick Williams, I think a solid effort off the bench. Dalen Terry got in there for a little bit, had the 1 point, the 1 rebound, the 1 assist. I think probably the surprise off the bench for us was Jevon Carter. And so Jevon Carter, look, he came in knocking down a couple 3-point shots in there. And so I think he got a quick 6. And I just like the fact that Jevon Carter, man, is a pro's pro. And so 11 points, a -5 in the plus minus box score. He had 1 turnover. He had 3 assists, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. Did a great job as far as knocking down 3-point shots. He would go on to knock down another one to make him 3 of 3, 3 of 4 from the field in 17 minutes. And so I think he gave us solid minutes. And then next, with Ayo Dosunmu, look, I think that we got some good stuff with Ayo Dosunmu, but this kind of goes into what I was saying with Tre Jones. I just think that there were times like defensively when he would try to get into this like one-man fast break, it just seemed like that the Pistons made an adjustment and they were kind of walling him up a little bit. And so he still had 12 points, -3 in the plus minus box score. He did have the 2 steals, 3 rebounds. He was 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 2 of 6 from downtown, 4 of 12 from the field. And so it was rough as far as just getting it going from the field, but still, getting the double digits. And then also, too, he was certainly a part of just helping this team make that push there in the fourth quarter. And so, that was the player stats today. I want to go ahead and jump into now just some of the team stats that really stood out here in this game. And so, the first thing that stands out in this is just going to be the field goal percentage, because the Pistons, again, shot the ball well throughout this one. And so 55.6% from the field. They shot 43.3% from downtown. You see that the Bulls were at 47.7 and 36.4 from downtown. And then we've been talking about the free throws, and so you see the struggle here for the Bulls and really the struggle for both teams. But still, the Bulls got to the line more, 28 times, and they only made 19 of those. And so 67.9%, you got to make those free throws, especially when you don't come out with the right energy. That stuff counts. And then when you look at the Pistons, 11 of 16, 68.8%. A push there in the rebounds, 44-44. And then when it came down to assists, the Pistons leading that category 30-21. The steals, 11-13. And so the Pistons lead there. And then the turnovers. And so 21 turnovers, 21 points. The Pistons had 19, and then the Bulls were able to get 20, but still 21 turnovers. That's a bit much for the Bulls. You never want to be that high. And then going back to what I was saying as far as just getting back into their game a little bit, I think that they found that in the third quarter there. And so 19-10 with the fast breaks, and then 58-66 with the Pistons leading in the paint. I actually thought that it was more than that, but 66-58, because it seemed like that the Pistons just had a ton of things in the paint tonight. And then so that was just really the keys here out of the team box score. And you also see that the Bulls never led in this game, and that the Pistons had a lead of 23 at one point in this one. So anyway, a tough loss here for the Chicago Bulls. Again, I think that this is very disappointing. We did see, like I said, some good efforts really in the fourth quarter, especially on like a sequence here where Modest got downhill. And then it was like, just within this next sequence, you see the steal and just the effort plays like this. Like it was stuff like this that got the Bulls back into the game, but they just really weren't able to seize the opportunity and just get over top of the Pistons here. And so a tough one. You guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking about this loss. What are your key takeaways from this one? And as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.